Hey everyone, this is Heidi St. John. Welcome to the Heidi St. John podcast. We have had over the last couple of years a tremendous opportunity in the pro-life movement to reframe the conversation about adoption versus abortion in this country. Since the overturning of Roe v. Wade, the conversations have started again afresh, and we're seeing them here in the Pacific Northwest as we are around the country. And today I have a guest on the show who's going to be talking with me a little bit about adoption and the foster care system. Tricia Goyer is here. Tricia and I have been friends for a long time, kicking around together out on the road. She's an author and a speaker and a wonderful ambassador for the pro-life movement. And we're going to talk a lot about adoption today and what it looks like to be an ambassador to this generation with the issue of life. Again, this is the Heidi St. John podcast. I'm glad you're here. Stick around. I think you're going to be encouraged. Thank you guys for tuning in today. So many things happening in the news right now around the issue of life. Because of the overturning of Roe v. Wade, we have an opportunity to reframe this conversation, and that's exactly what we're going to do today with my guest. Before I jump into it, I want to say thank you to the sponsor. Not Consumed is sponsoring this podcast. I love those guys. You know that I do. They are creating Bible study materials for you so that you don't have to be consumed by life or consumed by the world's ideologies. I hope you guys will check them out. notconsumed.com/Heidi. If you use the coupon code Heidi, you can get 15% off your entire purchase. And when you go to notconsumed.com/Heidi, you can find that you'll have access to a free 5-day family Bible study. Check it out. notconsumed.com/Heidi. All right, Tricia Goyer, my goodness. Welcome to the show.
Thank you, Heidi. It's so great to be here.
I'm glad you're all the way from Arkansas.
Came from Arkansas.
For goodness sake. Okay, do you guys have snow?
We got a foot of snow
I'm
in
a little
Arkansas.
on the jelly side. Do you is that normal?
No, we never get snow.
No,
like maybe a half an inch.
A foot of snow.
Yes. So
for goodness sakes,
schools were shut down. Stores were shut down.
I would imagine, though, you guys are a lot like people think we get a lot of snow here in the Pacific Northwest. Mm-hmm. Where we live, we're kind of in a convergence zone, and so typically we don't get a lot of snow. We'll have like an event maybe once a year. You get a dusting of snow, a half an inch around here. The school's closed. Everyone freaks out. It's on the weather. I can imagine that's what's happening over there.
Yeah, and we got a foot. So
that's nuts.
It was crazy. My kids had fun.
I know it's fun though, right?
Yeah.
I mean, we still haven't had a good snowfall this year here and this season. And I'm like, I am here for it. I want to get snowed in the worst way. Give me a reason to not come to work. That's what I'm waiting for. And so far, the Lord's like, no reason for you today, honey. Go to work.
Go to work.
Right? That's what's happening. I'm glad that you're here. And you and I have been friends for a long time. Mm-hmm. You've been on my show several times over the years. Mm-hmm. But I want to talk about your story because I think it really lends itself to the topic that we're going to cover today. Obviously you're an author. You're a prolific author. Every time I turn around, you're spitting out another book. How many books have you written?
It's like 90 something.
That's insane.
It's a lot.
I'm always like, hi, I'm Heidi St. John. I've written 10 books. I get around you and I'm like, hey, Heidi, I occasionally do paragraphs for people. I don't, you're making the rest of us look pretty bad, but you've got all these books in print. You write fiction. You've talked about parenting. Mm-hmm. You have a prolific voice, I think, in the pro-life movement because of what God's done in your life and the story that he's written. But tell us a little bit about your story, where you came from, because I think it adds context to why you're so passionate about this topic.
Yeah. And actually, I was born to a single mom. So she had me in 1971. Grew up in Weed, California.
Oh, I know where Weed is.
I went to Weed High, Heidi.
Come on.
I was a cheerleader at Weed High. So
they really should fix that.
They
won't. They love
won't.
it.
Now it's like bumper stickers.
I know.
And
well, people go to Weed.
Yes.
If you're traveling down I-5.
They will stop at
You're
Weed.
Going to stop at Weed just so you can get the bumper sticker. People do it. I've been there.
I know.
I've seen it.
I went to high school there.
I did not know this about you. This is making so many things make sense right now.
Why
all
a homeschool now? Why a homeschool?
Yeah, why? Yeah. You're like the poster child.
High.
Yeah, why do you homeschool? I went to Weed High. Say no more. Yeah,
that's it. Yes.
I love it.
Yeah, but I became pregnant twice in high school. At Weed High. At Weed High. Mm-hmm. The first time I had an abortion, which is something I really regret. Mm-hmm. God has brought a lot of healing there. And then the second time I had my son, Corey. So at 17, I had Corey.
Wow.
And
what were you, a senior in high school?
I was a senior in high school. I was a cheerleader. I dropped out. Finished my credits at home. I was an honor roll student, so I only had a couple more credits. So I finished my credits at home. Then they let me walk at graduation. So I had it was 3 weeks before he was born. My gown was like sticking out there, but I wanted to.
So you walked in a high school graduation 9 months pregnant.
Yes.
Whoa.
And there's only 42 students, so you can't really hide.
No.
Hide in that.
Wow.
But yeah.
Wow. I graduated from a Christian school, and I think there were 2 girls that were expecting who walked when we graduated. And I think, the conversation, one of the things I love about you, and I think it's why we connected so well those years ago, is that you are kind of a no holds barred. Like, this is my story. This is where I came from. This is what God's done in my life. And I had Walt Heyer on the show yesterday. I don't know if you saw him, but he's staying in your hotel. You probably run into him.
I'm going to go find him.
He is an incredible human being. And I think part of the reason why God is using him at 84 years old in such a powerful way is he's just telling the whole story. Like this is just the unvarnished story. But because guess what? We're all unvarnished. Right. Every single one of us has a story.
Well, it took me a while, though, to get to that place.
It takes everyone a while.
Yeah. And I had helped start a crisis pregnancy center when we lived in Montana. And Sanctity of Life Day was coming up. And I told myself I will go and speak and tell my story at church. And then that was like 6 months. I didn't have, think of it. And then I remembered, like, oh, no, it's going to be like in 2 weeks. And but that was the first time I actually publicly spoke. Was at my church telling my story.
And this is when in your life and in your marriage and in your when did that happen?
Yeah, so this was in my early 20s. So as a pregnant teen, I started praying for my future husband. God brought me John, who's amazing. We've been married almost 35 years, almost 35 years.
You guys got married in 1990.
Right? Yep. So just right after you guys.
Yep.
Right?
Yeah, we were married in 89.
Yeah. So God brought me John, and we had 2 more kids. And then probably 5 years into our marriage, went to a post-abortion Bible study, and then found healing, started leading the study.
So it took you all those years. I mean, you're saying, several years into your marriage, you go to a post-abortion Bible study, still looking for that healing. And I want to touch on it for a minute because it is a myth that abortion does not hurt women.
Oh, yeah.
People say, well, abortion is healthcare. No. Like
it's pain, shame, regret. And during high school, like as soon as like the day after, I'm like, that was a mistake. It wasn't like
take us back a little bit because I think it's really important to understand what precipitates a decision like that. This is where I think that even in the Christian community, we have compassion for a woman who is in that situation. Some of them, and I've interviewed them on my show before, find out that they're pregnant because of rape, right? And we use this excuse all the time to take an innocent human life because somehow abortion is going to erase the rape and erase the trauma of that. Tell me about what's the circumstances when you got pregnant the first time.
Yeah, I was just a sexually active teenager. He was a football player, cheerleader. Like,
come on, it's the story.
I know. Weed High.
And you're at Weed High. I mean, we're going to have to just keep saying it.
I know. And right away, my mom tried to help. She took me for counseling, but it was at Planned Parenthood.
Come on.
It was at Planned Parenthood. So, I mean, she was trying to...
just a den of vipers there.
Yeah. And so they're like, it's just a blob of tissue. And we're just scraping it away.
So you came in and you're obviously...
I was 15.
And I'm imagining you're terrified.
Oh, yeah.
15 years old. You
don't want anyone to find out.
No, you're terrified. What's the role of the father of this baby in all this?
He was younger than me. So 14, 15-year-old high schooler.
You told him?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, he knew.
I mean, how did he respond?
I think he was 14 because he was a freshman and I was a sophomore. Yeah.
That's a lot of pressure.
I know.
It's a lot of pressure. And I'm trying to imagine, because I don't know if I ever told you this, Tricia, but when I found out I was pregnant with Sierra, I went to Planned Parenthood for a pregnancy test. This is before they had them at the Dollar Tree.
Right.
It was hard to find them. And I thought, there's a big sign out in front of Planned Parenthood, free pregnancy test, right? So I take Savannah with me, who's like 18 months old. And they came back and said, we're really sorry to tell you that your test is positive and here are your options. They never said, we're assuming here I'm a married woman. I mean, I'm trying to imagine how they treated you because I was a married woman with an 18-month-old daughter sitting on all I wanted to know was, am I pregnant?
Right.
That's all I wanted to know. And they counseled me to get an abortion.
Oh, and they
told me all the places I could go.
They just said basically it's a couple cells. We just scrape them away and you never have to think about it again. It wasn't, this is how far along you are.
So did you have any idea how far along you were?
No. Wow. Until, I knew I was about 3 months. And it wasn't until later, after I got pregnant the second time, I dedicated my life to God during that pregnancy. It was actually, now she's my mother-in-law. It was my pastor's wife at the time. She had the little feet pin.
Oh, golly.
And so I'm like, oh, that's really cute. And she says, I think it's a...
is it a 16-weeker?
No, it was like 12 weeks. And in my mind, I realized, and that is when actually when I realized. Because now there's videos, there's, like, we see all the time, fetuses, all this, but they just said it was a couple cells. It was
so evil.
It was.
It's so evil. One of the things that Walt and I were discussing was the fact that we have glossed over the transgender issue in the same way that we've glossed over abortion. So we'll, and how many times have you seen people online say, why do you care what someone else chooses to do with their life? It's his choice if he wants to live as a woman. We don't actually talk about what a transgender surgery involves. We're not talking about it's brutal. These brutal, grotesque, Frankensteinish surgeries in which we take away a person's fertility. We ruin them sexually for life. We're not talking about that. Instead, we use words like it's a choice. And the same thing is true in the abortion industry. Both of these things, unspeakable evil. And yet we have allowed that in our country for generations. And I'd said, I did a news interview some weeks ago. They were asking me about abortion. And a huge newspaper, the largest readership in the world, this newspaper. And they flew out here to interview me, talk about homeschooling. For some reason, we got on the topic of abortion. Yeah. I probably brought it up. I mean, to be fair, I probably did that to myself. But she said, why do you care about a choice another woman makes? And I said, have you ever seen an abortion? I mean, have you ever actually seen an abortion? No. Do you understand what a saline abortion is? No. You ever seen a DNC abortion? No. Do you understand what happens in a third trimester abortion? No. No idea at all. Listen, if we want to champion abortion in this country, which apparently we do. Yeah. If we want to champion abortion in this country, I think let's show it. Yeah. So people at least understand.
They didn't explain anything before.
No.
Yeah.
And now they don't want to. Now that we have, pictures of human development in the womb, and it is so obvious the humanity of these little ones. Yeah. I still feel like we're whitewashing it, and it frustrates me. So you're in the middle of your second pregnancy, and you see these little feet, and what happens?
Again, the pain, the shame, the regret. When I got pregnant a second time, in fact, after I started going through the post-abortion Bible study, I realized a lot of people do get pregnant a second time. It's almost like an atonement baby. Like you have that hole, you have that pain. So even though I was young, was not following God at the time, had gone to church when I was younger, but was not following God, it's like I needed that. I needed something. I needed redemption or something. And then I gave my life to God. And then once I had Corey, John and I moved from California to Montana, and I helped start a crisis pregnancy center up there. Wow. And walking in the room for the first time when I went to the post-abortion Bible study and seeing all the other women, this weight lifted, because it was like I was carrying it alone. I didn't know anyone. Alone. You don't talk to anyone about it. My mom knew, my ex-boyfriend knew, but it was carrying all that. And then when I spoke in front of church for the first time, looking around, and it was like 120 people. This is not a huge church. I could look there and say, that woman. I could see from their faces the pain, the shame, the regret. And so I started a crisis pregnancy center and post-abortion Bible study, and the women that had abortions 30 years prior. Just that it's not something you just let go.
No. Yeah. And these women that you see, shouting their abortion, they're really, many of them either haven't faced the reality of what has happened, or they're doing everything they can. I mean, you shout and you're drowning out all the other voices, all those voices of shame and the sting of regret and the what ifs and all those things. And you really found healing in God's word and recognizing his love for you. And I think that's one of the things I love so much about your story, because it's just like Walt, which is so fresh on my mind because I just interviewed him. It's a story of healing. And I think that's so important. People need to understand, how devastating abortion is. Not healthcare. It doesn't help women. It hurts women. It obviously, the obvious fact that it takes a human life aside, it really does hurt women.
It does.
And do you feel like that, the conversation, do you feel like this is coming more and more to the forefront. Voices like Abby Johnson coming out and saying, I don't remember how many abortions she said. She's been on my show several times too. But she was saying that the pain, when you realize what you've done, it's almost unbearable.
Well, the hard thing is it's so much shame you don't want to talk about it.
Yeah.
And so like standing in front of the church that first time, my knees were shaking. It was only because I felt God telling me to do it that I did it. Otherwise, there's no way I would ever share that. And so the hard thing is they're still hiding. I mean, there's still people, I'm sure, that haven't told anybody.
Yeah.
I had Kate Battistelli on my podcast, and I was talking about that. And the first she started talking. She goes,
you should say who she is for people who don't know who she is.
Francesca Battistelli's mom. And as we're talking, she goes,
great.
Afterwards, she's like, that's the first time I shared my story.
Oh, wow.
And so she hadn't even told many people. She's like, don't air it yet. I need to go tell some people about that. But I don't even remember how we got on that topic. And now she's sharing her story. So this is, we're talking decades later.
Generations of women who are carrying this around.
Yep.
And this has become the mantra of the modern feminist movement, you know, and as a woman, I don't identify with the feminist movement at all. Certainly not with the Women's March. How embarrassing is that? You know, I mean, this is everything we don't want to be in a woman on display, right? And this is the hallmark of the feminist movement. But I think, and I'm curious to know what you think. I hope maybe that's a better word, that we're starting to see a shift toward life. What do you think? I
think that people are more aware now, and I do think young people understand it. And we have a couple young women that are the teen moms I mentored. They've kind of like adopted themselves, and my family and some of their kids have babies, and they went to go get pregnancy tests. These now the second generation of young moms, and right away they're still getting that you can have an abortion. They said no, I'm not going to do that. So I think the younger people today are more aware and are making choices towards life. Yeah.
Do you think that the conversations that are really becoming more out in the open, like I think one of my favorite video series are I think probably Live Action does these, several other groups too, but they will interview somebody on the street, you know, and they'll say, you know, are you pro-choice? Are you pro-life? And almost always, I'm pro-choice. I would never presume to make a choice for a woman, especially if they're men, which I find amusing, since it takes a man and a woman to make a baby. Whatever. The future's female, don't you know? I mean, they'll tell you that in Portland. So they see an abortion, even a first trimester abortion. And I've seen many of these people reduced to tears, had no idea. They don't know.
They don't, yeah.
They really don't know. And I think that those are the kinds of things, again, you know, we bring these conversations out into the open, and we say, if we're going to say as a nation or as a people, or even in the church, which we just don't talk still. I mean, they're not having the conversations that they should be having. We should at least know what we're talking about, right? And I think I'm hopeful that moving into 2025 and seeing more people who are pro-life, who are unafraid to speak about the issue, talking about it in the open, using plain language. Can we just be plain spoken? Why do we have to cloak everything in euphemisms? It's not a choice, right? I mean, a hot dog is a choice. Do you want relish or mustard on your hot dog? That is a choice.
Yeah.
This is not a choice. This is a much different conversation, and I'm hoping to see it reframed. It's amazing. So you and John, your husband's a prince of a human being. My husband
amazing.
Loves him. Yeah. You guys went on to have a couple of kids of your own.
Yep.
And then eventually you became an adoptive mom. Tell us about that story, because that's really what I want to focus on today is adoption and the foster care system.
Yeah. So working at the Crisis Pregnancy Center, I mean, you realize like we need to, pro-life is helping people. So we were helping the teen moms. We were providing diapers for them.
Are you sure, Tricia? Because I heard that pro-life doesn't care about the babies once they're born. Pro-life just wants
let me tell you, we were caring for all the people.
All
the boyfriends
babies
were showing up. We had counseling for them. Like when you start helping people, there's a lot of need there. So we were helping a lot of people. And then it came to the point where, okay, so there are girls we talked about, you know, there is adoption. So this is an option too. Young women, this is an option. So then it's like, well, if we're going to tell people this, then maybe we should open our home to adoption. And it was this first, just like God show us. And then of course, in his word, in the first chapter of James, it's, you know, pure religion is this, to care for the orphans and the widows. My grandma has lived with us for 25 years. It was like, okay, you got the widow part taken care of. Now let's open your home. And we at first tried to adopt from China. Okay. And then they closed the doors on that. And so then we're like...
What, the U.S. government or China did?
China did.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. They were adopting out tens of thousands of healthy baby girls. And then like, well, we're not going to do that anymore. So then we're just like, God, show us. Well, it was more like I was so crushed because I'm like, my heart is open now because you're ready. Like, God, whatever child you have, like our hearts are here. And it was actually that day when I found out that the adoptions were closing in China. I was bawling in my bed. Like, I don't understand. You've opened our hearts. That I was taking my grandma to Walmart. And on the drive, we got a call from a friend of a friend who said, are you open to adoption? I heard you speak at a MOPS group that you're open for adoption because we know a young woman. And that's how Alyssa came into our lives. So 3 months later, it was a private adoption from a birth mom, and we got Alyssa.
And how old was she?
Newborn.
She was a baby.
Newborn. I gotta be there when she was born.
Oh wow! What was that like for you?
Oh, amazing and surreal. Both like, wow, this is because, and kind of a mixed emotions too, because you're helping teen moms and young moms so much that you're hurting for the birth mother. Hurting for the birth mother. And I was a birth mother. Yeah. But she was a single mom. She's like, I'm barely able to care for the one I have. And I want a really good mom and dad. And I want more for her.
That is another thing. There's so many things that you just said that you could unpack. But that the fact that the birth mom would recognize that this precious human being needs a mother and a father. Mm-hmm. The idea, right? IVF. Gay adoption, the idea that we can just casually, callously rob a child of a mother and a father.
I think she liked John more than me is why I think that's what won her over because he's such a friendly guy.
People like Jay more than me all the time.
Friendly guy, and anyway, yeah. And so we took Alyssa home as a newborn. And we moved from Montana to Arkansas.
So she was your third baby, fourth child in the home. Okay, got it.
But Nathan at that time, our third, which was our youngest at the time, was 15. Oh so we were like nearly.
You're almost done.
We were almost done.
You could see the finish line.
Yes.
Hey, girl, I had. I gave birth to Sailor when Savannah was just shy of 20.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So Corey was 22.
Yeah, and I remember just people like, you do understand that you just signed up for 18 more years. All right. You get that. And I was super excited about it until someone framed it that way. And then I was like, oh, hey, I mean, still really excited, but also scared. Like, oh, hey.
Yeah. It was like, we're signing up for
all over
again. But it was also super fun because all of a sudden you have this
felt that way too.
Baby.
Yeah. Babies bring such a life into the home. Yeah. Absolutely.
And then when she was about 2, we're like, this kid is so spoiled. Like we need. So then, we had moved to Arkansas and they have what they call heart gallery photos everywhere in churches and they do fundraising things. You see all these kids' photos.
Who need homes
from foster care. And I didn't know this beforehand. There are some kids in foster care whose parents' rights have already been terminated and they're wards of the state. Oh. And so you don't have to do the foster where you're taking them to their parents and do the back and forth and you're not sure if you're going to be able to adopt them. These are kids that their parents' rights have already been terminated.
So you don't have the fear. And it's a real fear. I mean, I have friends who it's happened to that you attach to this child and you love him to pieces and the parent comes back and says, never mind. Yeah. I'm not going to give my child up. And now you've got a heartbroken potential adoptive parent.
Yeah. So we went and we did training for that. And we said, we're open. And so then we were paired with a 2-year-old and a 5-year-old, 2-year-old boy and 5-year-old girl. Yeah.
At the same time.
Yeah. They were siblings.
For goodness sake. So and then you adopted the sibling group. So now you're up to what?
So we had 3 and then we adopted those. Well, we had Alyssa, then we had 2 more. So that's 6. And they were like, okay, we're for sure done. And then God, as I'm working with teen moms again, now in Little Rock, I'm like, someone needs to get these young women because they were in foster care. Then they get pregnant. Then the cycle starts again.
Cycle repeats itself.
Like someone needs to get these girls, grab these girls, adopt these girls. And God's like, tap, tap, tap. What about you? And I clearly remember the worship service was like sibling group of teen girls, like in my mind. And we had... There were maybe 3, 4, 5-ish, 6, right around there. And then we had adult kids. And I went in the car and was bawling my eyes off. And I told John, like, sibling group of teen girls. He goes, I got the same thing. And so
it's that, you point it out, and I think it's real important because there's a lot of people listening to this who are maybe newer in their walk with the Lord or haven't quite, figured out how to hear the sound of his voice. And I do think it's that gentle nudge, right?
It was like a tap on my shoulder.
Yes.
Like, hello.
Well, what's interesting, not to keep bringing it up, it's so fresh in my mind. Walt was saying that when the Holy Spirit talks to him, he calls it the nudge. He said, I can almost feel it.
Yeah.
Like, pay attention.
It was, that's what it felt like.
And I think God does that. He really does. And I think it's so interesting that John got the same nudge.
Yeah.
Come on.
It was like we got in the car.
And you would you have needed that? You would have needed it.
So, yeah.
Right.
So went home and I emailed the lady who does the heart gallery, like, sibling group of teen girls, because you never know who's still available.
When you say sibling group, we're talking about 3?
I was thinking 2. And she said,
she said group.
Well, I know. God's like, when I said group. So she's like, I just got a photo like an hour ago on my desk. And there are 4 Hispanic girls.
4?
There were 4 Hispanic girls. Ages, they were between the ages of 10 and 14 at the time. And she wrote their names and she goes, I think these are your daughters. But we needed John and I to be on because that was the hardest thing
That's a lot.
ever. I mean, the little ones were hard, especially the ones that had been through trauma. There were some hard things, but we call them the middles. So we have the originals, we have the littles, and we call them the middles. They're still the middles. And we'll just say this, the middles. And it's a lot. So, it was a lot.
So a sibling group of 4, and you did it.
We did it.
You did it.
And homeschooled. So, and here they had been in foster care for like 5 or 6 years. So we went from, first homeschooled 3 all the way through. And then we're just starting to homeschool the little ones. And now we plop 4 in the middle. Like, talk about age, order, and everything. And I'm like, no, we're going to homeschool and we're going to read God's word and we're going to read missionary stories and you're going to sit around the table. And they're like,
no, we're not.
They were. It was something.
You're like, no, we're not going to do that. I think
they were, yeah.
Okay, wow. So let's talk about the foster care system for just a minute. It's overrun. I mean, here in Washington State, and I'm sure we're not alone in this. The system is it's a mess. Overburdened. My youngest sister. So in my family, there are 6 sisters, and my youngest sister Hillary adopted 2 little boys out of the foster care system. And she already has a special needs son, but she met these 2 little boys, and one of them had been terribly abused by his parents. I mean, it was just, I don't even think I could talk about it on the show without just sobbing. Right. It's just unbelievable what some of these kids are going through. And then she adopted his younger brother, so a sibling group. And it was not without its challenges. And I still think is challenging on some level. But I'll tell you, I mean, the phone calls that she would make, late at night, and the stuff that she was asking us to pray for in a text message. I mean, it was just absolutely heartbreaking. I'm imagining that this was sort of your reality too, right? Because these kids are coming to you, many of them abused, absolutely abandoned. You don't get into the foster care system.
And they had a failed adoption before us. People promising they were going to adopt them. I mean,
so now I imagine you're dealing with like reactive attachment disorder.
Yeah. All the things, all the diagnoses, all
the diagnoses are there. Yeah.
We could cover it all.
Yeah.
I mean, but, and then trauma on us, like not knowing how to deal with things. And I find myself getting angry because they're screaming in my face. It was a lot. And then isolating too, because suddenly you have 7 kids.
Yeah. Who's going to invite you over for dinner?
I know. No one.
No one. Guess we're having dinner at our house now.
Yeah. I mean, respite care once in a while. We'd have friends that could, if John and I were going someplace, we'd split them off like 3 different people to take kids. Yeah.
What kind of help is available to you? I mean, if you're, because I imagine there's people who are listening to this that are feeling that tap, tap, tap right now. I know it. And also they're terrified.
Yeah. We found amazing trauma counseling for our daughters. So in Arkansas, they have trauma counseling that we went through. It's called the Child Study Center, but that really helped. And it helped me know how to handle things because you can't just parent them the same way.
No.
Absolutely. So,
and I imagine it'd be hard not to take it personally. I mean, there's got to be
I wrote parenting books.
There's
Heidi.
A part of you that's just like, listen, Linda, I just rescued you out of the system. Why are you treating me this way? Where's the thing thank you.
I wrote parenting books and nothing that I had done before worked. And then also kind of mad at God, to be honest, because you knew this was going to happen. You knew how hard this was going to be. And this is what you called me to.
This is the thing, though. He isn't going to tell you like how hard it's going to be.
Yeah.
And not that this is the same thing, though, but I felt that way when I was running for Congress. Like, you asked me to do this, and really, this is because if you had known before, you'd had a much harder time saying yes. Like, if you'd seen it play out in a movie, you'd be like, oh, no, I'm not signing up for that. Oh, no.
Yeah.
And I got other things to do. I'm going on vacation.
Yeah.
Right. But you didn't know.
Well, and I had that conversation, like, we could have a vacation house right now. We could have all. And he's like, oh, but you're healthy. And John has a good job. It was like this another worship service. I guess this is when I have conversations with God. A worship service, like, I am taking care of you. Yeah. I'm like, okay.
Yeah.
And I will say that they're doing a lot better. One of them is still not
really struggling.
As soon as she turned 18, she went back to her bio mom and a lot of struggles.
Is that hard on you?
Yeah. Hard. And also, when I was praying about it, God's like, answered prayers on a quick fix. So if they have the word,
that's a good quote,
in their hearts, and we've seen that. We've gotten phone calls before. Thank you, you've done so much for me. And it's those little glimpses, and then it's I'm blocked on the phone again. But it's those little touch points here and there to know that it's in there.
It's in there, yeah. And that's what the Lord used you to do. Last time I saw my sister's little guys was over Christmas, and I told her, I said, I know that you're in the thick of this right now, and there's so many things going on, but I said, I got to tell you, I see changes. You know, I haven't seen your kids in 5 months. And I told her, I said, I'm just so proud of you. I can only imagine the Lord, you know, looking down and going, wow, you know, the difference that the love that she and her husband and the rest of their kids are giving to these 2 little boys is changing the trajectory of their lives. Yeah. For sure.
And one of the things we did is we read aloud a lot, and I mentioned missionary stories, the YWAM.
You and I are both like super fans.
With the missionary YWAM missionary stories are the best.
Yep.
2 of my girls are serving in Poland right now with Teach Them Diligently.
Come on.
Yeah, they're teaching preschool over there. So which never, like one of my daughters who's 20, she's almost 22 next week, or Sunday she's going to be 22. She's like, Mom, I never pictured that I would, as you're reading the stories, that I would someday be overseas and doing this. I'm like, girl, me neither, girl. Me neither. But she is. Both of them are over there, and I got to go over there and meet some of the teachers they're working with. I mean, you know, there's still always struggles, but the fact that they're there and doing that, and that would not have happened.
No, it wouldn't. And look what the Lord is doing. You know, I just keep thinking about it was your decision, yours and John's decision to obey. And so many of the themes that we see in Scripture center around obedience, right? It was Abraham's decision to obey. And a lot of times even faithlessness, you know, I mean, we take that step of obedience and we're like, well, I hope this is okay. You know, it's just like Indiana Jones, like, you know, and God honors it. He blesses that obedience. And I know you've seen that in your life, that blessing. And I was just reading Abraham this morning that you brought it up. When he moved to the promised land, it said he took all that was in his household with him. I'm like, who was there? Or like, who had he adopted into his family? We know that Lot went, but who else was there? Because and then it talked about the young men. There was a lot. Men. There was a lot of people. Like, he was caring for people. Yeah. And I think God wants us to open our homes and our hearts to people that, you know, orphans and widows, and those who don't feel seen or don't have a voice of their own. When someone is thinking about adopting, particularly looking at the foster care system, which we just said it's completely overwhelmed right now. Where do you start? So you're listening to this, and there's that little nudge, you sort of feel it, but you're like, oh no, I hope that's not what the Lord's asking me to do. If it's a nudge, God's doing something. Because God's the one that gives us nudges. Yeah. Like, out of our own selfishness, and we wouldn't do anything. We wouldn't do it. Yeah. Like, there's no way. But second of all, like, kids are there for no fault of their own. And that really helped me too. Like, even though they were acting out, we're having to go to counseling. These kids have been traumatized. As I was sitting with them in some of the sessions, and they were walking through timelines and things, I'm like, oh my goodness. Like, I'm getting upset because their room is a mess. And
it's amazing that they can function as well as they can. So, and there are people out there that can, other adoptive parents that I turn to that gave me tips, other support people, counseling, all those people really help. So there are awesome organizations and there are people that can give you that help, and don't be afraid to reach out to that. And also I had friends that, just like your sister with you, text any time of day, like, can you pray about this? Yeah. This is something that we're struggling with. And, but know that if God calls you, it's for a reason.
Yeah. And to listen to that. I mean, you wouldn't say, to be afraid. You would say, and I've heard you say this before, that there's so much blessing in it. Yeah. And talk to us a little bit about that.
And God changes me.
Because we've said, this is pretty hard. There's some ugly stuff that's going on. Like, and there are definitely are difficult things, but there's also the blessing of God is found inside the obedience. It's not found outside. So tell us a little bit about that. Like, just that blessing.
And I think, like, I am changed. Like, who would I be if I hadn't opened my heart and did what God called me to? I mean, would I have things to write about? Or even with my fiction, it's like the depths of emotion or the struggles, like all these things come through. I have a new parenting book for preteens, parents of preteens, coming out with Leslie Nunnery. She's telling her story of raising kids. I'm like, and preteens on top of being adoptive preteens. So you have all the hormones, all the trauma, all the things. So even the books that I have, the people I'm able to talk to, we have compassion because we've been there too with other people. I'll be at my booth at a homeschool conference talking to people. Adoptive mom will walk in and just start bawling. Yeah. And I could just hug her and love on her.
That's what happens at homeschool conferences.
Exactly.
The homeschool moms walk up to you. Your booth is humming. I mean, I do this a lot like you do. Yeah. And these women come up and they just start crying. And it's part of the reason why we're there, right? Is just say, you're not alone.
Yeah. And I understand and I have compassion and we could talk about it and I could give them hope. And God has a purpose for these kids. He has a purpose for us. We're all transformed as we're seeking him and as we're helping these kids to know him and seek him. And eternity. And all of them have, at one point accepted Christ and were baptized. Yeah. And even though one is kind of doing her own thing now, it's in there.
It's in there. Yeah. Well, and that's really your job. And I think that's important, whether you homeschool your kids or whether you adopt your kids or whether they're born into your family, the good old fashioned way. Our job is to really plant the seeds and water those seeds. And sometimes we water them with our tears. I think sometimes, we've all experienced, well, I thought we had this conversation. Wait, you believe what? What's happening? Right. And I think, as parents, we want our kids so desperately to walk with the Lord. And we have to remember at some point, that faith has to become theirs. And so we pray for them. We love on them. You write about parenting a lot. You've got a brand new book, Faith That Sticks, talking about building faith into the lives of preteens. Give us a little bit of a preview for that. And then we got kind of a special treat. We're going to talk to your daughter, Alyssa.
Yeah. Faith That Sticks. I did it with Leslie Nunnery. As we speak at homeschool conference, like people like, what? Give us advice. And we're like, actually, read your Bible.
Yeah, right.
Serve together, have conversations, have fun, and pray. Like we think it has to be these big things that we have to do. Just sit down and have conversations.
I think it's the little things. I think as I've gotten older in my mothering, for sure, I'm discovering it's really not the big things that we plan out. It's the little things that we do with consistency over a long period of time.
Yes.
Right. It's that, I called it at the beginning of the new year, I did a podcast called Long Faithfulness. It's that long faithfulness that God honors. It's the faithfulness when you're tired and don't think you can do one more thing. It's the faithfulness of praying for your children, which really I think can be a labor. I don't know about you. Well, I do know about you. We have labored for our children in prayer and continue to do so. But there's a blessing in it, right? There's a joy in it.
And making the time for moments together and not be so busy with our own things. Like, I'm coming out to see you, Heidi. I brought 2 of my daughters with me. Like, we're going to make this. We're going to do a road trip. We're going to go shopping. We're going to
You guys going up to Seattle?
We're going to go up to Seattle.
All right.
Like, we're going to go to the little, not in Seattle, but around the area.
You got to go to the Fisherman's Wharf. You got to do that. You got to do the classic. You got to go watch them throw the fish.
Yeah. But I could have just came and had my time in my hotel room to relax and to work on my books or whatever. But it is that time, those conversations, the shoulder to shoulder, when
you can't
build
replace
those
it.
relationships.
Yeah, it's irreplaceable. We're sort of out of time, but there's so many things that I want to talk to you about really quickly. In the book, Faith at 6, you share 5 practical ways to disciple kids. Give us a preview.
Yeah. And those were Bible reading, serving together, volunteering together, praying together, conversation and fun, like actually having fun with your kids.
Yeah. And with the word I hear over and over is just together. I think the culture now and has for generations, and this is the homeschool movement's really a rebellion against the cultural norms of family, and the culture tears families apart. Homeschooling brings families together, and I see that as a theme in this new book too.
Yeah, and we started actually talking about phones and social media because that is kids are getting a lot of attention,
and we're never in the same room. We're never all in the same place when we're all on our phones.
When you see people go out to eat and everyone's on their own phone and own device, and when we talked so Alyssa and I gave this talk at conferences, and like, what are we missing? And the questions all came around phone time, social media time, and it's not just telling your kids to put it down. You need to put it down too and go on trips or spend time together, have fun with them, pray together, read the Bible, read missionary stories, all the things.
Yeah, and you won't regret it, right? You don't get a do-over. This is your chance. So I'm excited.
Especially during the preteen years. They still like you.
They still like you. It's before your daughter comes down the stairs that one day and there was a switch that flipped overnight, and now all of a sudden she's like, I don't like your sweater, and no, I don't want to hang out with you today.
It's still like it's part little kid, part growing up enough where we can have those conversations. That's really what it's, this little window of time that we kind of like, oh, they're so hormonal. Like, we give it a bad rap, the preteen years. And so we're like, enjoy it and lean into it.
Lean in. So good. Tricia, this is great. You brought 2 of your daughters. One of them's going to come on the show with us. Alyssa is here.
Yes.
So we're going to take a quick break. We'll bring Alyssa on. We'll be right back. Welcome back. So really excited to have Tricia's daughter, Alyssa here. Alyssa, welcome to the podcast.
Hi.
This is exciting. So is this your first in-studio interview?
Yes.
All right. So don't screw it up and it won't be your last.
Oh.
She's like, thanks a lot. Okay. That was not encouraging. All right. I'm really excited that you agreed to talk to us about this. And we have been talking, obviously, you've been sitting in the studio this whole time. So you picked up on the conversation. Your mom talking about just adopting you and just this amazing process. And I want to kind of hear things from your perspective. But first, I really want to talk about the kind of adoption that this is, because it's an open adoption. And I know there are a lot of people listening who are like, I don't know what's the difference. And so I don't know if you want to pick up on that, or if Alyssa wants to talk about that, but I do want to talk about that. I can share
really quick. So when we met her birth mom, she said she wanted to open adoption and be able to see her.
And you were there when Alyssa was born, right?
I was there when Alyssa was born.
I love that.
Yeah, I was there when she was born. And so we try to go every year to see her. We have not been good about that in the last couple of years, but they communicate over, on the phone.
So what does it mean? What's the definition of an open adoption?
She knows who she is. They have communication. I oversaw that till she became probably 12 or 13. She communicates more with her older sister. And so they will text back and forth or message back and forth. But basically, she knows who she is and she wants to be a part of her life, but she also doesn't want to like step on our toes. And
the birth mom.
And so when we go up there, she lives in Montana. That's where Alyssa was adopted from, where we lived before. We'll go see her. She'll come hang out, spend time together. So Alyssa's known kind of that. As
do you have a sister then?
Yes.
From your birth mom. So how's that? Do you have a relationship with her, or do you talk to her?
Well, it's very like complicated. We do have a kind of a relationship, but like she doesn't really talk to me that much. I try to talk to her, but I guess.
Yeah.
And she's 4 years older.
Yes.
Okay, so that's kind of a different thing too. I mean, I got siblings that live in the same house that are 4 years apart, and they would tell you it's complicated if you were to ask them. So you chose it. Was it the birth mom's decision? She wanted I'm assuming the birth mom gets to choose.
Adoption.
Okay, so she gets to choose. So if someone is considering adoption, that's one way. And what's another way? So it's either or. It's either open or a closed adoption.
Yep, open adoption, closed adoption, and then foster care. When it was foster care, our kids we adopted from foster care, their bio mom couldn't reach out to them till they were 18. And because they had family members that knew we adopted them and had contact information for the girls, as soon as they turned 18, the the birth mom was contacting them.
Okay.
And so that becomes complicated too.
Yes.
But by court, she cannot reach out to them until they're 18.
So as Alyssa's growing up, when do you bring up, I mean, have you always known that you were adopted, or do you remember, was there a point in which your mom and dad were like, oh, hey, I have something to tell you?
Well, I always knew that I was adopted, but I started asking more as I got older, like about my mom and my dad, because I don't know my dad. I just know my mom and my sister, and like my cousins and stuff. Like I started asking more about that.
And did you feel like those were conversations that your mom made easy for you to have?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, that really important. I would imagine really important, that open communication, right? So that you're having these conversations. And so I think it's interesting because my granddad was adopted, and so he never knew his birth parents, but we had all kinds of conversations around who they might be. He was always really interested because he never knew who adopted him. So sometimes we would have conversations kind of like Melissa was just telling us a few minutes ago. We're like, oh, hey, this is part of their family. Or is it? It's just trying to figure that out. So you're the first adoption, right, in your family.
Yes.
And then after that, what? So how old were you when the next siblings came into your life?
Well, I was 2 years old, and I remember my mom and dad bringing them home, and they had all their toys. And I just remember like talking to them and stuff and just playing with them. Every single day we would go out and get new toys out of their box and stuff. It was so much fun.
I love that. And they were how old?
They were 2 and 5.
2 and 5. And so would you feel like that just sort of, they blended right into your family?
Yes.
Yeah. They blended right into your family. And so now you've got siblings, you've got the family that you moved, that you came into, and now you've got siblings that have come out of the foster care system.
Yes.
All right. And then what happened?
And then if we go on,
your mom just complicates your life. That's what's happening.
That's exactly what's happening.
And then we move on to the other sibling group, and that was very, very hard. Just a lot of grouping, like even with the 2-year-old and 5-year-old. After we started getting older and stuff, I just kept getting more and more left out, I feel like.
Yeah. And were these conversations that you were able to have with your parents?
Well, it was very hard because a lot of the time they couldn't do anything about it because the older ones, they were just trying to like, okay, we need to deal with them. Like we need to get them like settled in, like all this stuff. And then they just couldn't do anything about it for a while. And then I started going to therapy and stuff, and it just started getting better.
What do you think, Tricia, when you're considering, because there will be parents, listening to this who are considering, I'm going to bring either kids out of the foster care system or what have you into our home, and it's going to change the family dynamic.
Right.
What's your counsel?
The counsel that I received is the one I kind of repeat. Wait till some of your younger kids are a little bit older before you start adopting, especially older kids. It was very clear God was calling us to it. So we did the best we could. But looking back now, I see that the easier kids kind of got pushed to the side because there's ones that are demanding a lot of attention.
Well, and I mean, let's be honest. That happens in families anyway, right? That happens, when there's not an adoption. Some of my kids have said to me, you gave all the attention to so-and-so. And I'm like, that's because so-and-so driving me to the ragged edge of my life. And if I did not pay attention to so-and-so, then the whole house is going to fall apart. It's so true. So I think that can happen. That's probably good counsel for everyone generally, right? That we need to be sure that we're, as much as we can, taking care.
And then to lean in when someone's feeling like left out or we're like, okay, let's find a good counselor for her. So she's going to an excellent counselor that's helping her. And then we have great conversations. And so it's okay to go to counseling. Like find a good Christian counselor that will help. Even though it seems like to us, the things that Alyssa was struggling with may not be, like some of our children at times had to go to like mental health ward for a while. Like that's like we tried to label as bigger problems and not as bigger problems.
Things we can handle
if there's a cry
in-house
for help,
and things we can't.
If there's a cry for help, there's a cry for help. And really find good help, good counseling that can do that.
Alyssa, what would you say, for the kids who are listening? Believe it or not, there are lots of kids that listen to my show. And you know how I know? Well, A, they write into me, and B, I meet them out on the road. And sometimes they tell me that I put them to sleep. So that's how I know. What would you say to kids who are listening whose parents are considering adopting, and they don't know what that's going to be like, is there any kind of counsel that you, or some advice that you would give to a child who's in your situation, who knows, hey, mom and dad are getting ready to bring some kids into our family from the foster care system?
Well, I would definitely say that it's going to be okay, because whenever I was just by myself as a kid and all my other siblings were growing up and I was just like a little kid and my parents had brought in other kids, I was definitely like, my moods had just changed. I was just like more happier. I got to play with other kids. I had siblings I could show off to my friends, and I just had a built-in friendship basically.
I love that.
And yeah.
Yeah. Do you feel, when you look back, even because I know you guys have been through a lot of hard things too, right? But when you look back on balance overall, you see the picture, would you say, wow, that's something you would consider doing in your own life when you have a family someday?
Definitely. I've always talked about adopting kids, because seeing how I turned out, I would just love to have other kids have that opportunity.
Yeah. If there are kids who are listening, actually, I think this is good for parents to listen to. What would you say for parents is one of the most important things that your parents have done for you, that you're like, man, that was a good solid move that my parents did, something you really appreciate about your mom and dad and the way they've handled bringing more kids into your family and growing your family through adoption?
Definitely. Okay, maybe getting me a little bit of counseling.
Yeah. And
also just
how was the counseling? So when you say, I love this because I just did a whole show on this with Dr. Clinton. I think counseling is so important. And oftentimes we think, oh, we don't need that. Or what was so helpful to you about counseling? And did you go to your parents and say, I need to talk to somebody? Or did your parents go to you and say, girl, you need some help. You need some professional help. I mean, how did that go down?
I went and talked to my mom and I was like, I think I need counseling, because like, I don't know. I like to like talk to people about stuff, but I don't really like to talk to my family. It's kind of harder for me. So then my counselor can just like help me like reach out to my mom more and help me tell her things more.
Maybe like how to phrase things or how to explain things. Or did you explain the sandbox thing that you did?
Yeah, my counselor made me make like a sandbox and pick out little toys that represent my family members.
With one like a T-Rex and one's like a truck.
Well,
I'm trying to understand.
One was like a roach. Yeah.
Okay. We'll just keep these identities secret.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
we won't name names.
We won't name names. So one's a roach, and then so what's the point? So tell me. This is really funny. I'm really glad you brought this up, Tricia.
It was very insightful for me, I will just say.
Okay, so tell me about this. So
it like each toy, like even if it's from like a movie or just like a game or something, it represents like their character and how they act. Maybe a little bit of personality traits.
And okay, I got you. I'm picking up what you're putting down. Okay.
Yeah, and so one was just a roach, and then the other one was like a fairy princess. So you can definitely imagine their character traits.
But the groupings was, because she thought there's like a little group here and a little group here, and so it looks like what I really want is everyone to be in the group together, not like separated in the little sandbox. And so it was something that she was able to do with her counselor that they showed me, and that really helped me see like, okay, she's feeling isolated. So let's figure out ways to bring connection with the kids, with the parents. And so that's something I would not have come up with. That's something I wouldn't have identified. I would have not known how to do the sandbox thing. If there's people outside of us that have experience that can help us.
And would you feel like, what were some things in counseling that you felt like were sort of game changing for you? If you can think of them off the top of your head, just some things that you were like, that was really helpful. The sandbox, obviously.
Yes.
One of them. I'm going to go home. Hey man, where's Melissa? I'm going to go home and do a sandbox. I got some characters in mind. Let's go.
It's definitely a fun experience.
Yeah.
I would say that.
Yeah.
But some things I would say was maybe we made like pizzas, and we would put, I guess it was like a trauma pizza, and we would make different slices and like color the different things, and then I would like show it to my mom, which I never did. I forgot it, but
I haven't seen the pizza. I'm like, what are you talking about with this pizza?
Oops.
But working through things and thinking through things.
So it's more than just sitting. What I'm hearing you say is it's more than just sitting on a couch talking to a therapist. She's giving you tools. She's giving you like a toolbox, and she's putting the tools in the toolbox so that when you're home, you have a better way of dealing with things that would be frustrating to you as a general rule. Does that sound about right?
Yes.
Yeah. And how important is it, Tricia, that when we think about counseling, that we're not doing secular counseling?
Right. This is a Christian counselor. And so I reached out to a girl that I knew that I used to go to church with and said, do you know someone that would be really good? This is the age range. It can be adoption issues, sibling issues. And she specifically gave me this person. And so we were on the waiting list for probably like 3 months. But I'm like, we're waiting for her because I knew that was someone that has faith. She works in a church also, knows the background of her family, has worked with adopted families before. And so we were willing to wait for that. And so she does have the foundation of God's word, understands our family. She understands the importance of adoption to God's heart. So that's the person you want speaking into your life.
Yeah, no kidding. Yeah. Well, and honestly, I mean, I think counseling, because someone's giving you tools, you want those tools to be godly tools, right? You want her to be able to reach into that toolbox and know that there's a biblical foundation underpinning it. Alyssa, I think, at 14 years old, you're so articulate, and it's clear, that you are loved. Have you felt at some point that God's going to use your experiences and what's happened in your family? How do you see this playing out as you get older?
I think that I'm definitely going to get older and maybe get married and adopt more kids.
Yeah.
And help them.
I love that. I love that. I love the smile too. I love your smile. It's so
Thank
pretty.
you.
And the confidence that you have. Do you feel like, is this an easy thing for you to talk about? It seems like it is an easy thing for you to talk about. And do you find that it, as you've gotten older, especially with your siblings, do you feel like those relationships just continue to get better and it's kind of growing you up, and you're in a place where now the Lord's going to start using it and you're starting to help other people?
Yes, definitely. As I get older, me and my sister Bella, she's
adorable. I didn't get her on camera, but she's real cute, that girl. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
We definitely have grown better. Even though all my other siblings have moved away or grown up, we have stuck together. Even though we have a 3-year age gap, we're definitely built-in besties.
Built-in besties.
Not all of them have moved away. You still have a little brother.
He's there.
Stinky and loud.
Is he the roach? No, don't say it. I'm just don't even tell me.
No name dropping.
No name. Well, Alyssa, I'm so happy that you've come to talk to us about this. Can you think of anything else? Is there anything else that you'd like to say or anything else you wish I would ask? I don't want to miss anything because I've got you guys here.
I was going to say, I think some of the relationships with some of the older sisters have gotten better after they're out of the house.
Oh. Yes, that's definitely something. I feel like in the house, everybody was just so together and all everybody was so tense all the time and just
there's 8 kids sharing one bathroom upstairs at one time. So it has as they get older, brains develop, more maturity.
Yeah, that's right. So overall, on balance, you'd say this was a blessing.
Yes,
thing.
Definitely.
Yeah, I love that. I love that because it's God's heart. God's heart is for adoption. We've been adopted, right? All of us into God's family. That's his heart. Well, you're delightful. You were a credit to your parents. And I'm so glad you're here. Thank you for coming on the show.
You're welcome.
Tricia, thank you. This has been great.
Thank you, Heidi.
I love you, girl.
I love you too.
I do. If people want to find you online, where do they do that?
TriciaGoyer.com.
TriciaGoyer.com. Well, I'll see you out on the road.
Yes.
I'm sure.
Speaking.
Yeah.
For sure.
I'm sure we will. Thanks for coming on the show. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
If you guys want more information on my guest today, you know how to do it. You can head on over to the show notes at HeidiSt.John.com. We would love it if you would leave reviews for the show. Those reviews really help us get the podcast out to more people. And it's also a way to let people know about the podcast. And we want to hear from you. You can reach out to me directly at HeidiSt.John.com/Mailbox Monday. That's where you're going to find a form that will let you leave questions that we can answer on the show. A lot of times I take those questions and I throw them out at guests as they come. So we want to hear from you. We want to hear your feedback. Make sure that you leave those comments. Wait for it. Short and sweet and to the point. That's the way to get them to the staff the quickest, right? Short and sweet and to the point. Also, I'm reading through the Bible with my women's ministry group at Faith That Speaks. You guys can join me by going to faiththatspeaks.com. That's faiththatspeaks.com. Also coming up there is a parenting conference here at Firmly Planted. So if you guys are anywhere in the area, February 22nd is the date of that event. We would love to have you join us. We're going to be talking about parenting through the teenage years. We're going to be talking about parenting kids that are going through struggles or maybe recovering from trauma. We've got people here who are going to be talking about special needs kids. I will be teaching with my husband about the importance of a strong faith system in your family. That session, I think is called Strong Roots, Strong Faith. So hope you guys will join us February 22nd. You can find out more information by going to Firmly Planted Family. We will have that up on the website for you. Thank you to today's sponsor, To Not Consume, for sponsoring the show. You guys can find out more about that ministry by going to notconsume.com/Heidi, where you can download a free 5-day Bible study. Check it out. And be sure and use coupon code Heidi at checkout, and you'll get 15% off your entire purchase. We love you guys. Thank you for listening. I hope this has blessed you as much as it's blessed me. Have a great day, and I'll see you right back here again at the intersection of faith and culture.